Let's break this bitch down. Act 1. Let's set some stuff up.
Our wholesome exploration of Italian colonialism in Africa starts with some spooky music, presumably over some actual photos from the time and place in which the film takes place. We see Nick's character, Lieutenant Enrico Silvestri, leaving his army camp in the middle of the night to go find a dentist since his toothache is killing him. His bunkmate, Mario, warns him that if his Jeep is stopped by rebels, he'll need more than a dentist, which probably means he's going to need an orthodontist.
Those are expensive.
Teeth out.
It's a lot of work.
Mario goes back to sleep and we hear his character narrating. He says he wishes he could have stopped Enrico, but he couldn't have even if he tried, since the guy who turns out to be a bumbling scumbag was his superior officer. Enrico's driver drives straight into a ditch 5 minutes into the journey because, he was busy making fun of Enrico for looking at a picture of his wife, which prompts Nick to yell, "Watch it!" They get stuck and the rest of the convoy shows up to find the driver, screaming about Lieutenant Silvestri not being able to wait. So he took off across a big valley to a construction site where he was sure there is a dentist, because everybody knows there's dentists at construction sites.
He knew there was like a doctor of some sort. Maybe just back then, there's just any doctor would do.
Yeah.
I can rip your tooth out, sure.
They got tools at the construction site.
Yeah.
They probably got some pliers.
Cast away that shit. Mario and the convoy get where Silvestri should have been headed after the dentist, but no one has seen him. The next morning, he's still nowhere to be found, so Mario tries to phone the construction site Enrico was headed to, but the lines are all down. It's a nice little bit of foreshadowing there. A few minutes later, Lieutenant Silvestri shows up on a supply truck. He says he got lost and seems upset about something, but when Mario tries to get the full story after seeing Enrico injured his hand, he refuses. Enrico heads to the dentist at this new barracks, or whatever the fuck we're supposed to be, wherever we're supposed to be now, since he obviously never found one in his big day out on the town in Ethiopia.
I was confused on this. So they made it so he was like, we're going to move out. So they were leaving that camp to go to a different camp, and Enrico wanted to go to the dentist first and then he would meet them at this new camp. Is that
seems
did
like
you guys get that interpretation?
I thought they were always going to the new camp that he ends up at eventually. Mm-hmm. But he was in so much pain,
he couldn't wait.
He couldn't wait, so he was like, well, they have to have a dentist or a doctor at the construction site, so I'll go there.
Yeah.
And then I'll meet up with you guys at the camp that we're hitting before we all ship out back to Italy. Because the whole thing is they're supposed to be going back to Italy, right? Their tour is over.
His tour is presumably coming
yeah, no, they were
to
still,
an end.
yeah, they were still there.
Going to be.
That's right. So he's going there before he leaves. That's what I took away from this whole thing is.
But we also have he's trying to find that lake, which seems like it's next to the old camp. But then he ends up at the new camp. I don't know. It's very confusing.
Right.
Or he goes to that old camp to catch a ride to go to the new camp.
To go back to the new camp. Right. Because he never goes back to the construction site until later.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just an indictment on the whole film is, but maybe it's just an indictment on military operations in Ethiopia at the time. It was just a big clusterfuck and no one knew what they were doing and they were just going from one camp to the other and back and forth in kind of pointless manner.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It kind of feels like everything's not really that organized very well with this campaign.
They all seem like they're in, disarray. They don't know what the fuck is going on.
Their fucking lieutenant can just walk off, apparently, and no one cares for a couple of days.
Though we do see a deserter get shot by firing squad later on. So I wonder if I guess he's a higher up person, and I'm guessing Mario covered for him and stuff. But yeah. That's kind of we've talked about it offline, but I feel like the whole point of this movie is just look at what these assholes did and got away with.
Yeah. There's just some parts in this movie where I feel like better directing of created some more clarity in what they were trying to say or how they were trying to say it. He asked the dentist,
"Is it going to hurt?"
And the dentist says, "I wouldn't want to be in your shoes," which is comforting. I've had the same conversation with my proctologist. That dude's got fingers like sausages, like German sausages. but
Which can
you
be
gotta
fun
get
too,
checked.
you know.
I mean, I'm not saying that I don't go every 6 months because I don't enjoy it. Anyways, he gets his tooth taken out with no anesthetic. Remember, this is the early 20th century, so it was probably just going to be like ether. Anyways, they're probably just going to slap a rag of ether on him. Which
If
I think I
that.
would, yeah, I think I'd rather just have them not numb me up at that point. And he screams the whole fucking time, like a horrible scream. Honestly, after you hear what he got up to during the hours he was missing, you'll definitely feel like he deserved every bit of that pain. Yeah, spoiler alert, it's going to take a sick turn.
Yeah, you're not going to like Enrico.
No.
Just so you know.
Yeah. Later that night, Enrico confesses that the road was a nightmare and asks how long someone can live with a bullet in their gut. It's pretty standard pillow talk between army bunk mates. Mario's taken aback by the question and asks why he'd ask a question like that, so Enrico recounts his journey. We flash back to when Enrico and the driver slammed into the ditch. The driver asked Lieutenant Salvatore if his toothache is gone now.
Are you going to mispronounce it every single time?
Silvestri. So yes, I am.
Silver Street. Silvestro.
I don't want to say
Silver Sun Pickups.
I don't want to say Stallone. The driver asks Lieutenant Silvestri if his toothache is gone now that they're stranded in a ditch in the middle of rebel territory. And he says, no. Then he chucks some gravel at the guy. He grabs his stuff from the truck and says he'll walk to the construction site to find a dentist. The driver freaks out since the rebels could come along and kill him, but our protagonist, that in quotes, ignores him and just walks off. You know, probably crop dusted him on the way out too, because he's a real asshole.
I wish we would have seen that. All right, I'm taking off.
Oh my God.
Oh, you fucker.
Next, we cut to a construction site where a large crew is busy building a bridge, only to find the doctor isn't in. He takes a couple painkillers and heads back towards the truck, but some trustworthy looking guy offers to show him a shortcut. The strange guy leads him to a cliff and tells Enrico to take a path through the valley and it will lead directly back to headquarters.
Just wander through the African jungle.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine.
After this dude's like staring at him all creepily too.
Yeah, I don't know what this guy's deal was. Like, I figured he would become something else, but then we just find him dead later. So
Yeah, he ends up dead. You know, next they smoke a couple cigarettes and the guy cryptically tells him, "Good luck, Lieutenant." He gives him a sinister smile as Enrico heads down the path. Enrico ponders in voiceover why he wished him good luck in that tone and says, he was a strange guy. A real strange guy. And that he doesn't seem like a laborer, but more like a middle-class student, whatever the fuck that means.
Is he supposed to be like a demon or something, or the devil?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Sure, there's symbolism in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is all based on a novel, so.
True. Yeah. Sometimes that doesn't translate very well. Seconds into the journey, Enrico spots a dead horse rotting in the sun, which he just kind of ignores. He stops to take a He stops to take a break and smokes a cigarette, but he spots a lizard crawling on a rock, so he grabs it and sticks the cigarette in its mouth while saying,
Hey, want to smoke?
Putting a cigarette in a chameleon's mouth was kind of a sign that this guy is an absolute piece of shit. Quick fact.
It's funny.
Quick fact, the shot of him putting the cigarette in the lizard's mouth was completely cut from the UK version, since I guess they're not big fans of animal cruelty. Surprise, surprise.
Guessing it's symbolism for showing up in a foreign land and forcing your ways down the throats of the natives.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, that's the only thing they cut. Out of this
You
whole
think of
movie.
all the things to cut.
They just cut the chameleon smoking. Which, you know, I get. But that was like the BBFA, I think, is like their version of the MPAA. I think is also some sort of porn sex act. BBFA.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you probably couldn't put it in a U.S. film either.
Probably not. Yeah.
You wouldn't get that rating saying that no animals were harmed in the making of the film.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, who said that was harming the chameleon? Maybe he's a smoker. I don't know.
They don't live long enough to get cancer anyway.
Or
Can
creature.
reptiles get cancer?
I think everything can get cancer.
I think everything could get cancer. You can milk anything.
I got nipples, Patrick. Can you milk me?
Can you milk a chameleon?
The chameleon. The chameleon walks off with a cigarette in his mouth, and Enrico heads on his merry way while probably thinking back on fond memories of blown up birds with M80s and strangling puppies. He trips on some branches and falls on a rock, which cuts open his hand. So he washes it in a small pool under a waterfall. I'm just going to point out something to keep in mind. Ethiopia is not exactly known around the world for having super clean water. So that might have something to do with how infected his hand gets over the next couple of days.
Yeah.
But
maybe it's more modern times, but yeah, Ethiopia's known
think
for
even
having
back
some
then-
pretty diseased water.
Just the pathogens and stuff in the water. You probably don't want getting
I mean, it's-
directly into an open wound on your hand.
Eastern Africa, just some random pool. There's a dead horse like 5 feet away.
yeah, exactly. It's probably not the cleanest fucking water. He spots a naked girl in the waterfall pool and apparently says to himself, "Don't mind if I do." He walks directly over to her, says hello, then strips down while asking her where the lake that strange guy mentioned is, and it's obviously she doesn't understand a word, but does seem somewhat intrigued by the glistening cage abs. I know I was. Then he tosses her some soap. She saunters over to him butt naked, so he gropes her a bit. You know, why not? She runs away and gets dressed, and he makes his way over to her, where she presumably gives him directions since he keeps asking. He seems pretty disappointed she got dressed, so he looks around to see if anyone is looking, then just kind of rapes her. You know, like he's entitled to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of that throughout this of like just take what you want because this land is ours. We just own everything here, including the people.
Yeah.
It's
Like the way
Italian-
he treats Johannes later
It's
on.
that Italian machismo.
Yeah,
Italian machismo. Yeah, I do have to say I do appreciate the film not pulling the punches on the brutality
Yeah.
of their
Especially as an
campaign into
Italian film.
Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like really pointing the finger at how fucked up that was moving into Africa and just in general how European societies
yeah. It
conducted
wasn't
themselves.
just Italy that was doing
Yeah.
this kind of shit.
No, it's just
Everybody.
like that's the way those conquerors were. Because I mean, history lesson, but we don't got to get into it. But yeah, I did appreciate that they didn't pull the punches and that your main character is conducting this, and now it's like, well, I don't want to root for this fucking guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess he was pretty horny, kind of keyed up from the walk. He was sun drunk too. Yeah, that's it. He had very little to drink. He was a little sun drunk. Plus, he was horny. He strips her clothes off, yanks her to him, and throws her to the ground while she's screaming, crying, and trying to get away. Thankfully, we cut away from that awfulness to see both dressed once again. Thank God they didn't actually show.
That's where I'd say it's okay to pull the punches here. You know?
Yeah. They didn't have to show that.
I don't want to see that.
We knew what was happening.
Yeah. It's not a Gaspar No film.
Whereas, what's his name? Simon Sano? Simon Sano?
Simon Sono.
Hyman Sano?
Simon No means no.
Hyman Sonos.
Scion No means no. There it is.
He tries to give her some money to make up for the whole rape thing. That'd do it. Here, you want some of these fucking nickels?
Now I'm Nicolas Cage. Because I gave you my nickels.
I ain't got no nickels now. Nickel less.
Well, when she doesn't want it, he says,
I know you're hungry, so I have something for you to eat. This is yum, yum, good. Mwah!
Got to do the
Italian.
hand kiss. Yeah.
to tell you, that's not racist.
It's not racist because they're white.
Yeah, it's true.
I should point out that he saw the picture of his wife in his bag he had in the truck earlier and somewhat aggressively turned it over, presumably / hopefully out of shame for what he did to this poor girl. She's disgusted by the food he offers, but then he gives her a Bible, which she accepts since she and her tribe are actually good people, and he's an evil colonizing prick.
I guess that's the symbolism there. We see that she has that Bible in her cabin later on. So I'm guessing that when she goes to get the eggs and the bread, she actually went back to her village and then came back to this dude. So,
yeah, it gets weird.
So maybe she's kind of like, well,
Here's my husband now.
Worse.
He's my husband now.
I mean, that's probably what it was. 'Cause
Yeah.
she's a Christian, so she's trying to, not burn in hell for eternity as they try to do, make you feel good in church.
Especially those Catholic ones. He gives her a few more items from his bag, including a pair of shorts, but she's only interested in his watch, which he says doesn't work. We cut back to the present where we see that he is still wearing the watch. Rico tells Mario when he put the watch on her wrist, he had this queasy feeling he was putting on a wedding ring, since I guess she expects a commitment, after he destroyed her innocence. He says, all right, I'm gonna head out, just like that SpongeBob meme, and decides to leave. But Miriam chases after him and screams something at him in her native tongue. He shuts her up by kissing her, causing her to drop to the ground, so they make love again while Goat watches the whole filthy act in disgust. I always said goats were perverts.
I love that cut to the goat. What's going on over there?
I wonder if that's supposed to be symbolic of like this is an evil, like an act of evil, because goats are demonic
Satan.
and shit. Yeah,
I think they're also like there's a lot of those little cuts to the animals, especially when terrible things are happening, and I think it's to show how wild and untamed Africa was, and in some ways continues to be in certain parts, but not as much as Westerners think it is.
Yeah,
or like who's the real animal?
Yeah,
in that situation.
Later, she brings them some eggs and bread while he laments that they can't have a conversation. She smiles at him and seems happy to be with him, even though, we already talked about it. He draws a lake and a notepad he had in his bag and says he has to find his camp, but she doesn't understand. Then he draws an alligator, which causes her to scream, Harges! And he says, yes.
Harges! Good. Where is Harges? Roar! Where is it?
There are some good cagey moments.
There are.
Yeah,
I was so happy. Yeah, I was so happy to see that he went full cage in some of these moments. She leads into the lake, but it's getting dark, so they decide to make a camp for the night in a cave. She makes a fire, and they get down to business once again after she uses a piece of her clothing to bandage his hand. See, this is where I got confused. Like, why? Why is she still having sex with him?
I mean, I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah. I can't really crack jokes about it.
Yeah, we'll just...
it
just
is Nick
gloss
Cage.
over that a little bit.
I would do the same. But.
I guess.
I think it's supposed to be morally ambiguous.
Gotcha.
Make you ponder how you feel about this.
Yeah.
Yes, and clearly she was somewhat interested in him before he just fucking took what he wanted. But at the same time, it's like, let's just we'll gloss over this ick and move on.
He wakes up later to his toothache, pops a painkiller, and hears some roaring nearby. He spots a hyena and fires a few rounds at it, one of which ricochets and hits Miriam right in the stomach. Gonna be a short marriage, I guess.
Obviously, why he asked how long someone could live after being shot in the stomach.
What is it? What was it in the last movie we watched where that dude got shot and he was totally fine?
Yeah,
so like that was
a weird parallel.
He can come. She's fine. He murdered her by putting her in that little crevice that we're about to talk about.
Yes, well, as we see later on, he literally murders her.
Spoiler.
Because she probably could have lived if he would have taken her to a doctor, but then he would have had to admit all the terrible things he just did.
How did you meet this lady? Well, funny story.
Taking a bath.
I dropped the soap. We cut back to the present where he tells Mario that she died a little before dawn, and his first question is, were the shots heard by anyone? Just being a good friend. Turns out Mario is a bit of a scumbag too. I mean, it makes sense. They don't see these people as human because they're conquering them.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Colonizing them.
Just cares about what's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We see Enrico dropping her body in a stone crevice of some sort, but before he can cover her body with stones, he remembers she's wearing his watch. So he takes it off her body. That way he can't be incriminated in her death. I took it more as he's a piece of shit and he just wants his watch back.
Like, watch back, damn it.
Doesn't work, but it's still worth more than her life.
Exactly. He said he covered her body with rocks so the hyenas couldn't get to her. Then he put out the fire, gathered the empty shell casings, covered the blood with dirt, and says he didn't leave a trace of their presence anywhere, which turns out to not be totally true. He says he washed the blood off his hand and clothing in the creek while feeling like he wanted to scream or pull out his own eyes, but he left anyways. He says he didn't get very far before hearing the sound of Maria's tribe making their way by the waterfall we saw earlier. Wasn't that in the opposite direction of the lake?
There's a lot of geographical things in this film that just don't make any sense. Because they went to the lake and it seemed like they went 20 steps from where they were. And there's the lake. Oh, cool. I don't know how I didn't find it. And then he's going back the opposite direction to get to the lake. Yeah, so that he can get on the road to his camp.
We need a map of this fucking area.
And maybe then it's all later on. He ends up in the village, but he's up on the road somewhere, way away from it. And I don't know. It's just very confusing.
Yeah.
And where is that town at? Where is the ocean that he goes to where the doctor is? It's all very hard to follow. I mean, I guess if you're doing this in book form, it makes a lot more sense. But in film form, I'm just where the hell? How is that close?
Yeah. He runs for it and spots a Jeep on the road, which then took him back to camp. We see a flash of her face and then his hand on a gun, hinting that there is more to the story, but it's too shameful for him to admit, which is pretty bad since he just admitted to rape and accidental murder. Mario asks if that's the whole story, and Enrico freaks out saying,
"Yes, goddammit, I told you everything! Why can't you listen?"
Mario says reporting this won't bring the girl back to life, so confession will only serve to postpone the leave Enrico has been waiting 6 months for. So in other words, fuck it. Let's just pretend like none of it ever happened.
Yeah, Mario seems like a real scumbag too.
Yeah.
Even though he's sort of the moral compass of the film somehow. Mm-hmm. In a weird way. No, I guess Johannes. Johannes is the moral compass.
Act 2. It's about time we had some conflict, wouldn't you say?
I just looked it up at Ethiopia, Italian Ethiopia, and it looked like there was, if you count Eritrea, what is it?
Eternia?
No,
Eritrea.
Eritrea was on the Red Sea and was considered part of that, so that's probably how they got to the port.
Gotcha. Okay, makes sense.
I was confused too, or I wanted to know since we're talking about maps and stuff. I was like, I'm confused. All right.
Yeah. Lieutenant Silvestri receives a letter from his wife, but becomes distracted when he sees one of Miriam's villagers just outside the camp, who we later find out is Johannes, which is Miriam's father. Enrico and the other senior officers in the camp are alerted that the bridge construction site we saw earlier was overrun by rebels, but no one was alerted of the attack since the phone lines were all cut. So we had that nice little foreshadowing before he couldn't reach the construction site to check on Enrico. All the lines were down. Which at this point, was it phone lines, like literal phone lines, or was it just like whatchamacallit, Morse code, and those types of wires that you
that's
send
a
over?
good question. I think out there it would have to be Morse code that they're transmitting.
Probably.
They're not gonna fucking run phone lines.
Yeah, I don't know. They said that there were like 3 different lines or 6 different lines, I forget, that led into the construction, and they were all cut by the rebels.
I mean, maybe because they're trying to lay infrastructure, maybe they did run some phone lines.
Yeah.
But I would imagine them being in the military, they would probably resort to Morse code at that time over landlines because it's more secure.
Or telegraph. The battalion heads to the site where they find an absolute massacre. Everyone is dead, including that strange guy who told Enrico about the shortcut. The squad retraces, which, like I said, I thought that guy was going to become something, but
Yeah.
he's just,
I wonder if maybe in the book, in the novel, there's more to him.
maybe, yeah. I would assume, they probably like talk about the construction a little bit more and maybe talk about that guy a little bit more, but because he kind of like alludes that there's more to his story of like he's like a middle class student and he just didn't look like a laborer, and I don't know. Which like does that matter? And was there a hierarchy in class in Italy?
Maybe.
I mean, it
I'm
was
guessing there probably
fascist,
was, yeah.
right? At that time,
If you're educated, you're not going to be digging ditches and building bridges.
Yeah. Anyways, the squad retraces the rebels' steps, which also happen to mirror Enrico's own steps. They find the dead horse, the waterfall, and are really confused when they spot a chain-smoking chameleon. Out there in the woods. I wondered at some point if, like, is this Enrico's fault in some way? But it doesn't
That's
seem
kind
like
of what
it.
I felt like they were kind of get at.
Yeah. Rewatching it and then, breaking it down scene by scene, it doesn't seem like it had anything to do with him. Perhaps maybe that guy, the strange guy, let him in, but then why would they kill him? I don't know. Maybe they didn't know about this shortcut and then they saw people going up and down it and they figured it. I don't know. But it felt like they were trying to paint it as if like Enrico had something to do with the rebels discovering the construction site.
I wonder if they heard the gunshots and that's what drew them to that area, and then they found the path up to the construction.
That's a good point. Which
Yeah,
is
that also explained why the guy asked if they, if anybody heard the gunshots.
Yeah,
maybe.
Because there's another part later on where they mentioned gunshots attracted the rebels. So
yeah. Okay, so it is his fault. It's also his fault because he fires off the warning shot when he's with the major later on.
Oh, yeah.
Like that alerted the rebels as to where they were.
Yeah.
So, yeah. He's just, everything he does is terrible. They find a man hanging in a tree who was also one of Miriam's people, who was like playing some weird, I don't know, like violin instrument thingy. That is, but it's like a traditional African instrument. Mm-hmm. It made like a really weird twang, but I thought maybe that was in Neo-American, just putting something weird in there. Oh, Africa, it'll sound like this. They find a couple more dead villagers, then find Miriam's village, which has been partially burned, and eventually a mass grave full of her people. So like they came in and just killed the whole damn village. And again, if you tie this into Enrico, holy shit. Got a lot of blood on his hands. And then he just lives happily ever after. Hopefully he died a horrible death in World War II.
He got hung next to Mussolini.
Yeah. Got a bayonet at the ass. Enrico angrily storms up to Johannes with a gun in his hand and asks him who he is, to which Johannes says, "A Christian." Enrico yells,
What is your name?
and he tells him, and then Mario breaks up whatever was about to go down there, which some awful could have happened there too. I don't know. Just start
repeat of the
blasting the
lake.
village people. Hey.
Wait, why are they here?
Enrico makes his way to the cave where Miriam died, and he stares at a spot on the ground where he, presumably, as we find out later, he does, shot her in the head, and finds a shell casing he must have missed. And then he hears a shot, which I have a question of like, were they shooting at this little kid? They just see this kid run and they're like, shoot at him.
I mean, there are rebels in the area, so
I guess. It
They
is
may be a little
obviously
keyed
a
up.
child, though, so.
yeah.
The platoon tracked down a young boy whom Enrico also recognizes from Miriam's people, and the boy strips off his shorts, which are apparently the pair that Silvestri gave to Miriam He was just giving her items to make her feel better about being raped or whatever.
Jesus.
I'm not sure I want to know why the kid immediately took off his clothes when surrounded by a large group of soldiers. But Enrico stops him by saying, "No, you can keep them." About the shorts.
I'm guessing he didn't want them to think that he stole them, because why else would he have Italian army pants? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We'll go with that. Yeah. It makes me feel a lot better inside.
But again, they are Catholic, so...
Moving on. The platoon marches on, but the boy chases after them close behind. Back at the camp, the senior officers have a dinner, and Enrico is surprised by the group with some papers alerting that he is getting the leave he's been requesting for 6 months. And once he's furloughed back in Italy, he will presumably be discharged. Then he can just wait a couple months for World War II to start. Later, he and Mario celebrate by singing a song together and drink some watered-down type of alcohol. I don't know. The major makes fun of it. I'm not sure what exactly that was. Some African drink of some sort. I don't know. They seem to get real trashed off of it, whatever it is. I don't know. You know, you can get drunk on high life. You just drink enough of it. Mm-hmm. So whatever this is, same deal.
Sunny D.
Enrico says, "Mario, Mario, Mario." And then Mario says, "You're in love with your wife, aren't you?"
I was hoping he was going to say, "Yeah, it's a me."
It's a me. Then a bunch of kids run up and say, "Good morning, good evening." Until Mario gives them some change and then slaps a naked kid on the butt. What a weird dynamic they have with the locals. Which is it? Good morning or good evening? They don't speak English, man.
Learn some proper Italian, dumb kids.
This is one of my questions of like, why is this in English? It was being released in Italy.
I think they hoped it would be released in the States.
Yeah. They probably just dubbed it in Italian, and Italian audiences were used to seeing, or European audience in general, used to seeing dubbed films. So
yeah, I guess so.
Most movies be made for Hollywood.
It's kind of like the Sergio Leone, those spaghetti westerns.
Yeah.
Like some of it seemed to be in Italian and some of it was in English, but then it was redubbed for us in English.
Yeah. I felt like with those, it was like whatever the actors could speak. They just let them speak their lines, and then they dubbed it all in English.
Yeah. That makes sense. Enrico laments about Miriam saying she was pretty and that Mario would have behaved differently if he was in Enrico's shoes. Guessing he means Mario wouldn't have just straight up raped her 5 seconds after meeting her.
Probably would have waited 5 minutes.
Mario says, "Who knows? So maybe I guess he would have just raped her." Who knows? I don't know. I don't know myself
You'd
well
have behaved
enough.
differently. I'd have to see her.
Yeah, maybe. She was hot enough. I don't know.
Yeah, how hot is she?
Yeah. And I got a threshold, if it's like a 6 and above. Not making any promises.
Mario tries to reassure his friend by saying Miriam would have been killed by the rebels anyway. So that makes it all better. As I said, if it was him firing the shots that led the rebels to their area, then it was 100% Enrico's fault and Miriam would not have died. If Miriam had never met him, I think she'd still be alive. Enrico screams at him that he's not talking about afterwards, but rather when he first met her, which prompts Mario to just start singing at him. Which I guess is how Italians deal with awkward conversations. I just change the subject by singing something. It kind of happens later on with the major too. They're like talking about when he wants, or that he doesn't want to go home and stuff. The major doesn't want to go home, and he just starts singing out of nowhere just to change the subject. The locals all look on happily and seem to love his singing, and one even starts dancing. Reminded me of like Kelly Kapoor, dancing in the.
God damn it!
Tell the way I lose my walk, I'm a woman's man. On The Office, yeah. Anyways, before Enrico takes his place, and starts dancing with him. And then Enrico says, "Tonight, I'll be your Princess Peach, Mario." It's the army, you got to do what you got to do. They drunkenly dance for a moment before being interrupted by a superior officer, only referred to in the credits as Major. So I just called him the Major throughout. I don't think we ever hear an actual name for him. He scolds Mario for having his back turned to him, and Enrico says they were just celebrating his furlough. The Major gives them a stern dressing down, then escorts them back to his quarters, where he says, "Can I be Luigi if he's going to be Princess Peach?" No, wait. He opens a locked closet and says, "I want an immediate, straightforward, no bullshit answer out of you. Otherwise, I'll put you up for charges." And he opens the closet and asks, "French cognac or Italian rapa?" He laughs his ass off, and they all celebrate with some, were they cigars? I don't know. They smoke something there. He opens up a little case that has some sort of smokable item in it. Maybe it's weed. Who knows? This guy's a crook. The Major asks about Lieutenant Silvestri's furlough and says he loves being at war since it beats doing dishes and wiping his ass. Who can argue with that?
So that's what that smell is.
Yeah.
Oh, seriously, what the fuck? I think he was saying wiping a baby's butt, but he said wipe an ass.
Wipe an ass.
Maybe it's lost in translation.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. The Major says he feels
to kill, Nigel. Wrong movie.
Yeah, that was Bill Murray was in that thing.
Yeah, Bill Murray was in that one. This is Nicolas Cage.
The Major says he feels sorry for Enrico since he has a wife to go home to and seems to be sloppy drunk after 2 sips of cognac. Guess the Major had started. Yeah. He was getting ready. See if I could go find some soldiers who can drink with me. Maybe we can get up to some shenanigans. Bounce on Bowser. Things get somber after a few moments, and the Major salutes a photo of his wife on the wall. So he's complaining about how shitty it is to be back home, but then he's happy. I don't know, he gets somber, and he thinks about his wife, and he kind of alludes to the fact that he feels like he is also an evil scumbag and hates what being in Ethiopia has done to him as well. But I think it's kind of like that, in Apocalypse Now, when he talks about how once you go home, you can't really, you don't feel the same, and you're never really the person that you were before. And he says he barely spoke to his wife before he said yes to a divorce. That in Apocalypse Now, I'm guessing the same thing happens. They just can't really live with what happened over there, and regular life just seems really mundane and boring, and probably reminds them of what they did, which maybe they should be reminded of it every second. Mario tells Enrico that's why he wants to stay in Africa after looking at the Major's wife in the photo. I couldn't tell because of the low quality transfer, but I'm guessing that the Major's wife is so ugly she makes blind kids cry. But I couldn't tell. She looked okay in the, I don't know. That's why he doesn't want to go home, this chick. Mario takes a peek into the Major's closet and notices it's full of contraband that he's flipping for profit, so he's a crook. The Major suggests they go out on the town that they're occupying, and immediately Mario spots some girls in front of a church. He asks if he should ask them if they have a house that they can go back to, so yeah, he definitely would have raped Miriam too. Enrico says all the drinks he had made him tired, but Mario pushes him to live a little and continue raping and pillaging this poor country. Mario works his charm on the women, but they quickly reveal that they have leprosy. Fun stuff. Mario recoils in horror while the Major laughs his ass off again. The Major says, quote, "Do you really think 2 angel pies like that would let you pick them up if they didn't have leprosy?" I see that in the bar all the time. Enrico asks if someone could catch leprosy from someone who had it and didn't know. And the major says, you can tell if someone has it based on the white turban they all wear. Bum, bum, bum.
Oh, no.
As we saw, Miriam was wearing a white turban, even when she was in the pond. Then the major says, stick no dick in a white turban. So I guess that was a popular expression back in those days.
Yeah.
Still is.
Words to live by.
Step away from that one. Silvestri flashes back and realizes that Miriam was wearing one when he found her. So I guess this movie just took a real turn. He thought it was messed up before. He unwraps his bandage and notices that the wound resembles the two women at the church's leprosy that they have on their hands. He looks at himself in the mirror, shocked to find that he might be turning into a vampire. Oh, wait, I mean a leper. He does give the mirror kind of the same look.
Yeah.
I'm invisible.
He pulls out his Luger and thinks about ending it all. I'm surprised he didn't like turn around a picture of whoever was president at that time. It's just like a dying of the light. But is interrupted by somebody coughing outside of his tent, and it turns out to be that kid who apparently just followed the platoon all the way back to their camp and is just hanging out outside of his cabin for some reason. That's one of my Coppola questions of like, how does this kid know who Enrico is? I guess if we're going by the logic that Miriam went back to the village, she might have told the kid about Enrico, and maybe the kid like spied on them or something from a distance. I don't know.
Doesn't he say, though, that she didn't live with them anymore?
Yes, which I have questions about that as well. He asks the kid if Miriam was his sister and angrily asks if she was sick since she wore a white turban. The kid says she doesn't live in the village anymore, and Enrico freaks out saying,
Because she's sick! She's sick! Isn't that it?
very cagey delivery on that one too.
Mm-hmm.
There's some like real demented moments in this movie. Just crazy looks in his eyes, which I guess, makes sense because he's going through some shit. The kid somewhat acknowledges that she was in fact sick. He kind of like just shakes his head. And Enrico asks if Johannes is his dad, with a crazed look in his eyes, while the kid just kind of sits there wondering if this maniac is about to kill him. It's like, fuck, what do you want from me, dude? I just followed you to see if you had like some change or something. I was going to say good morning, good evening, and you're just an asshole, so I'm out of here. Enrico rides along with a guy who asks him whether he's happy that he's getting furloughed, and Enrico looks absolutely miserable. He's just like sweating and looks sick, and he's, obviously scared. He asks the guy to stop by a village, and then he just kind of helps himself to some water where all the villagers are like just standing around like watching him. They're probably pissed that he just dunked his greasy, filthy, potentially leprosy-filled head into their drinking water without asking. The guy's such an asshole throughout the whole thing. Just imagine the level of entitlement that requires to just like pull off to the side and just take whatever you want. I'll just take this bucket of water that they had filled up for some reason, stick my head in it, and then just drive the fuck off. Who cares? Drink that, you assholes. Surprised he didn't piss in it. Enrico pops back in the Jeep after the driver becomes concerned because he like kind of looks at him like, there's something going on with this guy. And they head to a doctor at another camp of some sort on a beach. Which, like I said, I thought Ethiopia was landlocked, but I guess it wasn't at the time. It was on the beach because of Eternia, and Skeletor was like protecting that whole area, I think.
It's Eritrea.
Eritrea. Urethra.
Yeah. Eritrea. Whatever.
Anyways, what a nice visit he paid those villagers. Dunk his head, leave. Can I just point out the fact that every time Enrico gets out of the Jeep in this film, he just kind of leaves the fucking door open like an asshole and walks off?
That fits.
What a dick, dude.
Oh, fuck me. I guess I'll close the door before leaving.
There's like 3 or 4 different times he gets out of a truck and just leaves the door open. Who does that?
An asshole.
An asshole.
Enrico.
Hey, man, I got to get out of the car and close the door so I can drive away. Just thinking of the driver being like, "Hey, Rico, no, you didn't. Close that door."
No way.
Valley Girl. The doctor treats a horrible infection on a guy's leg, then says it's because the dude runs around barefoot all day. But the Italians don't tell the villagers that, since then they'd have to buy him shoes. So that's cool. Every moment of this film just makes me hate these motherfuckers more and more. All of them. Just terrible people. But this is very true to life. This is what happened. And this is probably actually sugarcoating it a bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Enrico tells the doctor about a book he's writing where a guy comes to Africa and catches a mysterious tropical disease. Pretty sneaky way of like telling him, getting a good understanding what the symptoms are of leprosy without actually saying, I have leprosy. He asks if the doctor has any suggestions of what the man could get. Maybe something, perhaps, for example, maybe like leprosy? I don't know.
And Enrico's like, oh, leprosy? I've never heard. What is that?
Oh, what is that? Is that something that anybody could catch? Maybe.
It sounds like something you get from leopards. I don't know. Interesting. Go on.
Fascinating. Enrico says the character in his book would have gotten the disease from sleeping in the bed of another man who had it, and the doctor says, why not have the character sleep with a native woman? Since I'm guessing that's probably the easiest way to get it and happens constantly with these barbaric assholes in this country, I'm sure. Stick your dick in a white turban? Well, there you go. Stuck in Ethiopia forever now. Go live at the church. The doctor tells Silvestri that it takes 10 to 20 years for leprosy to show up in the body, but there are some rare cases of it showing up rapidly. And the character will be able to tell if he has leprosy through sores that don't heal, like lymph nodes that are inflamed, which he checks his lymph nodes at one point under his arms, among other things. There's all sorts of different symptoms of it. He also says that lepers live a long life since the disease eats away at the body slowly, but have to be interred somewhere so that they don't spread the disease to others. He also says doctors are required by law to report any cases of leprosy, and the character would not be able to leave Africa ever again. I think that is kind of like his mindset at this point is like, I just need to get back to Italy so that if I do have this, then I'll at least be there.
Yeah, in an Italian leper colony.
Yes.
Stuck in
just
this hell of his own making.
Yeah, I'm imagining that it's at least somewhat better in Italy than it would be in Ethiopia, being treated by these awful bastards. Though he's white, so I don't know. He might get special treatment. Who knows?
I think he just can't wait to get out of Africa.
Meryl.
God damn it.
The doctor spots Enrico's wounds on his hand and becomes suspicious. He asks if Enrico's character has a family back in Italy, and Silvestri becomes more and more uncomfortable with the doctor's questions, since he can tell that the doctor's asking about him now. The doctor asks to take a look at Enrico's hand, and Enrico makes an excuse that he has to leave since it's getting late. No, he can't tell time with his watch. Several times he actually looks at his watch and just gives a random time with the major later on. It's 15:30. I don't know. He tries to make an excuse to leave, but the doctor insists. And had Enrico let the doctor look at his hand, we might have saved ourselves an entire third act of this movie. Because obviously, we'll get to it. But instead, Enrico gives the doctor a fake name and then just tries to shoot him in the head. Seems like a pretty egregious overreaction, but that's just me. I guess, he doesn't want anybody tying him back to the potential leprosy, but it's like,
you're going to murder the doctor in the middle of this camp or hospital or whatever?
But apparently had an assistant.
Nobody catches him.
Could have recognized. Yeah, nobody catches him. Anyways, Enrico runs for it and tries to sneak onto a ship leaving port, but that grand plan, so this doctor was on the beach, so probably the town where the boats are is like right next to this place.
Yeah, he's not going to report that someone just tried to shoot him.
Someone tried to kill me just 5 minutes ago. It's a pretty recognizable person too, honestly.
He's an American. Everybody else is Italian. I don't know.
I love that he never tries to do an Italian accent one time.
I think it would have been horrible.
Anyways, so he tries to sneak onto this boat, but that grand plan is quickly ruined when an officer tells him that he's not allowed on board until they set sail in a few hours. And he shows the guy his furlough papers, and the officer tells him that the papers have to be stamped by an embarkation commander before he can leave. So that quickly just falls apart. Enrico throws a fit, like chucking some magazines or something across the room. And then he leaves the ship, but he spots a large group of soldiers excitedly getting their stamps to head home. But when Enrico sees an officer inside the command center receive a phone call, he decides to bail since he's presumably wanted for attempted murder at this point. I guess he was assuming that officer was getting a call about some random soldier trying to shoot him in the head, probably with a description of Enrico, but I guess he's kind of saved because he disappears for God knows how long. That's one of my big Coppola questions after this. We'll get to that.
Act 3, The Resolution.
The next morning, Enrico wakes up outside of a fortified wall where he spots a deserter being shot by a firing squad while his weirdo brother Alexei tries to get him to help. Wait, I think it's a different movie. We see Enrico is at the end of his rope and has no idea how he's going to get out of this sticky situation he's gotten himself into as he listens to the firing squad make Swiss cheese out of one of his countrymen. Lord of War was the other one. Enrico makes his way to a restaurant where he begs the waitress to help him get on a ship as a stowaway. I'm not sure what a random waitress at a restaurant knows about getting a soldier back to Italy, but whatever. Maybe there's like a whole underground railroad for helping deserters. I'm guessing since one was just caught in the preceding scene, so that's probably not an uncommon thing. Doesn't seem like a very pleasant place to be spending your time.
But like... I mean, so like, how does he know that she's connected to this? Because there's like an Italian flag in the restaurant. So like, is this
maybe that just means
thing?
that they spoke Italian and he was just asking around.
Yeah, maybe
to try and see. It could be that it's just common. Like there's so much corruption everywhere that it's not hard to find someone to help smuggle you out.
Yeah, it's probably true.
Locals are probably all eager to make a buck off of it. So. He talks to some girl in the back of the kitchen, and she says there's a ship coming in 5 days that he can be smuggled aboard, but it'll cost him 30,000 lira, which, according to his reaction, is some ludicrous sum of money. Surely something a soldier or even a lieutenant is not going to have on hand.
Yeah.
Well, he says he'll pay her when he gets back to Italy, and of course she says no, because no one's that stupid. He angrily storms out and heads down the road of this town where some prostitutes yell at him for some good lovin', and an old lady stares him down, which felt oddly reminiscent of Prisoners of the Ghostland. I wish he would have taken some time to quickly grope that old lady's breasts for no reason.
God damn it.
Enrico is spotted by a military jeep and he goofily hoofs it to get away, but it turns out to be the major. He asks what Enrico is doing in town and tells him he missed his ship home. They go out to eat some spaghetti since they're Italian, and the major excuses himself to take care of some business. Enrico spots the major doing a back alley deal with some shady-looking dude and sees the major receive a large wad of cash. The major says he has a little surprise for the lieutenant, and the next thing we see is the two of them with some prostitutes. Enrico says he can't get it up since there are too many flies in this house of sin. which happens to all of us. Don't laugh. Well, at least this was before age, so he didn't have much to worry about there.
It was kind of reminiscent to Lord of War.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have leprosy, do you?
He asks if he can get a ride back with the Major to camp while staring at the satchel the Major keeps his cash in. They drive back along a dirt road while passing graves, while the Major bitches about how boring and shitty life is back home. In voiceover, Enrico says, unlike the Major, he wanted to return to the life the Major despises and to his wife, so he can give her leprosy and probably syphilis and herpes and gonorrhea and everything else he's picked up over here.
I thought that the graves were kind of like, he's like bitching about what life is like back home.
Yep.
While passing graves that were probably created by Italian soldiers killing locals.
Killing natives, yep. The Major spots some rebels in a valley up ahead, which like they weren't really set up to do a really good ambush, I guess. He just sees them and then pulls over.
I don't think they were planning an ambush. I think they were just making their way across the valley, and he was like, we don't want to drive by them because they'll kill us.
Mm-hmm. He says they should wait until the rebels pass, and he needs to take a shit anyway, since I guess dysentery is great for staying regular. So they all have some kind of cholera or dysentery or whatever. So anyway, Enrico uses the opportunity to steal the Major's money while he's off squeezing out some cannelloni in the bushes. He grabs his stuff and tells the Major he's going to walk back to town. The Major tries to order him not to leave, but when Enrico says he's not joking about leaving, the Major says,
Fuck you! And fuck off!
And leave me to my lotions. Seen that video. The floor might be broken.
Not that it's any of your business, but fuck you and fuck off. And leave me to my lotions. Up the floor just cracked. I believe I might fall.
He was a great actor. I loved his performance.
The Major?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no surprise that he actually had a pretty successful career.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Long after this. As recent as like just a couple of years ago, he was in, a James Bond movie. So,
yeah. And somehow he looks exactly the same.
Yeah. What the fuck is that about?
I know.
25 years later.
Like, wait, how's that guy not aged?
Yeah. That Mediterranean blood, I guess.
Fucking Mathis.
Because I was like, why do I recognize him from something I saw recently? I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Hasn't aged today. A little bit of gray in his hair. It's better.
Yeah. Enrico makes it about 10 feet before the Major discovers that he's been robbed. Couldn't have seen that coming. Like he wouldn't check his stash of cash.
Yeah.
And he quickly catches up with Enrico since he's in a truck and Enrico's walking. He gets out.
How far did they get from that town that Enrico's going to just walk back?
Yeah. It felt like it was quite a ways considering the Major's reaction was like, what the fuck? Like, why are you going to walk now?
Yeah.
You're going to die of dehydration.
Which he kind of almost does, really.
Yeah. The Major gets out and says there's a lot of money missing from his bag. Oh, shocker. Enrico says he's keeping the money, but he'll give it back to him as soon as he gets back to Italy. I guess that's just his go-to line to everybody now. The Major reaches for his gun, but Enrico took all the bullets. The Major calls him a crook and says he's going to report him, to which Enrico says,
No, you won't!
You won't report me because I charge you with stealing for the fucking army!
So, yeah, they're made for each other. The Major calls him insane and an anti-fascist, which is weird because up until now I thought Enrico was one of the bad guys. I mean, I've certainly never saw him assault anybody with a skateboard. So, there. Did I piss off both ends of the spectrum? God damn it. Enrico pulls out his gun and fires a shot in the air. Again. This is like a motif of this. Yep. Probably worth noting that there's an army of rebels within earshot that just massacred an entire construction site full of workers and a village earlier, but we'll get to that in a bit. He tells the Major to get out of here. So the Major hops in the truck and takes off while screaming, "You're going to die out here." Enrico stumbles down a hill and checks his wound and consults the book the doctor gave him earlier since his hand has gone numb. His symptoms seem to match exactly what the book says, so he becomes even more hopeless.
WebMD before WebMD.
Yeah, I don't know if we mentioned that, but the doctor gave him a little book that had all the symptoms.
Leprosy book.
Like, oh,
Yeah, the doctor was like, "You can have that. I don't need it.
Yeah, I don't need that.
I can tell leprosy immediately because I'm so used to seeing it with everybody." The rebels pass by on the road above him, but don't see him. So he apparently makes his way back along the shortcut the strange guy told him about earlier. Which, the geography of this whole movie is really confusing.
Yeah.
It'd be funny if it was all just like 3 miles just around this little area.
It's a giant circle.
Getting lost and crashing trucks, and it's just this one road that goes around.
Couple hours, you're at the construction site. Whatever.
Our camp was here, and then we had to move over here, and now we're moving back over here. It's just the same tract of land.
Well,
rebels apparently just kill everybody, and we're helpless to do anything about it.
Groundhog's Day.
He sees the same chameleon he saw earlier and decides to finish the job his cigarette wouldn't do, and he shoots it with his Luger. No, wait, he rides by on a motorcycle and it bursts into flames. No. He sees it, goes, "What's that fucking chameleon doing on my rock?" No. He just passes by it.
These movies are all just blending together at this point. What's this fucking chameleon doing on my fucking rock?
It looks like, but also it looks to be a different kind of lizard. So, he tries.
I thought it was like to imply like, oh, it's very reminiscent of that, but this isn't the same place. But it turns out to be the same place. So I don't know.
I need to have my iguanas in the movie. I don't know what I can do. I don't have my chameleons.
They're going to make me cut the chameleons out. And if they do, I don't think I can be a filmmaker anymore.
Anyway, he tries to steal a donkey from some poor village, which of course happens to be Miriam's. He spots Johannes and demands that he let him sleep in the village. Again, just like he's entitled to it. He angrily throws some money at him and then screams at him to let him stay there and keep quiet. Enrico then just walks into someone else's hut and claims their bed. Which, seriously, this guy's such an asshole.
I think it was like Johannes's cabin. It's just like,
yeah.
I'm sleeping in your bed, Johannes.
He's like the only one left in the village who wasn't massacred. So, yeah, it makes sense. He just takes his hut.
Dude, there's like 20 other cabins here. Sleep in any of them. Don't sleep in this one.
Everybody's dead. So you can take whatever house you want.
I'm not going to sleep by the mass grave. It's disgusting.
Enrico wakes up later in a cold sweat and tries to drink from his empty canteen. Johannes brings him some water and Silvestri thanks him, but when he sees the water taste bad, he whips Johannes to death and burns down the village. No, but you can totally see him doing that, right? That wouldn't be out of place at all. But he'd feel really bad about it afterwards, so it'd be, it'd be conflicted.
Mildly bad.
No, slightly.
Only if he caught some horrible disease from it.
Yeah, only if it affected him in some way.
Yeah. Johannes gives Enrico back his money, so the lieutenant gives him a bag of salt instead. Which, I mean, that's useful. Salt is very important if you don't have refrigeration. Some time passes and we see Johannes find Enrico on the floor with a fever and he tries to get him to eat. More time passes and we see that Enrico now has a full beard. He yells at Johannes in the empty village Johannes's people used to live in before they were all murdered. Such a great house guest. Enrico finds what was once Miriam's home and the Bible that he gave her. Johannes finds him and dickhead Enrico asks him where he's been like he owns him. He asks Johannes if the cabin was Miriam's and Johannes tells him it's his cabin now if he wants it since, she's dead.
Yeah.
And it's the Christian thing to do. Help those in need. Or it's anything to get this asshole to leave his own cabin. So
been in there for like 2 weeks.
You like it? It's got a better view. Take it. You can have this donkey too.
Comes with a Bible.
Enrico says he wants to stay with Johannes and then yells,
You don't ever leave me again, Johannes! I'm sick to the soul!
He says
Can't
Miriam
you
was.
See that?
So now he needs this guy for redemption.
I don't really understand. It's just a weird turn of events of he's leaves with the money to go to the ship, and then he walks down the hill, and he doesn't know where he's going. And then he just stumbles into Johannes's village. And then he's just like, oh, I live here now.
I guess he was delirious with infection and fever, and Johannes, being the good Christian that he is, nurses him back to health and gives him everything up to including his house and the clothes off his back if he asks or whatever. And it's to show, I guess, that this is how good people should behave, not irredeemable pieces of garbage like Enrico is. He says Miriam was sick, and so he is now too. But Johannes says Miriam wasn't sick. And Enrico admits to Miriam's dad how she died and tells him the whole story, including a detail we didn't see, but I'm sure have all figured out now, of Enrico shooting Miriam in the head to end her suffering.
Which, like I said, like, you know, she could have actually probably lived if he would have gotten her to a, you know, some sort of medical treatment.
I don't know. It seems like everybody gets infections and dies. Like,
1936. I don't know.
Yeah. He shows Johannes where to find his daughter's body, and Johannes almost beats Enrico to death with his staff, but stops since he's a Christian, and probably realizes Enrico has already punished himself enough. Enrico just stares at him, and you can tell he wants Johannes to kill him since he knows he's a god-awful pile of shit who probably deserves to die.
Or maybe that was just my interpretation of the whole thing.
I think we're supposed to get that. He's a tortured, he's sick to the soul. He's a tortured soul.
Which that look that he gives Johannes, I think, was the one that they used for the cover art for the DVD and a lot of the marketing that I've seen around. Be that same look. It's kind of his moment of, you know, realizing what he's done, sort of redeeming himself or trying to redeem himself.
Except he doesn't do anything from his own actions to be redeemed. He just they build a little shrine for Miriam. I guess there's that. And Johannes uses some herbs to help treat the wound on Enrico's hand. We cut away to a news report saying the Italian government has ended the war and is sending all its troops home. The rest of the film is in black and white and features actual news film from the end of the war. And we see now, once again, healthy Enrico on the docks heading towards the ships he tried desperately to get on earlier. It's like... I guess they address this sort of, but like he's been gone for how long? Like he had a full beard, so he's been gone for weeks, and they just shows back up, and they're like, "Whatever, get on the boat."
Yeah. Well, he kind of mentions like in all the excitement, they just kind of just stamped everybody's stuff and just let him go.
They don't care.
I guess he held on to that in that village while he was
like they're getting ready to go home. Why do they really want to try and process another deserter who's shown up? Like add more paperwork to their job?
I guess so. Yeah. It's funny, like, you know, they called this a war, but it was like they just came in and took everything they wanted, and the locals tried to stop them. And that was the war. Those are the rebels.
Yeah. Well, Enrico happily hops on board where he's immediately spotted by Mario. He tells Mario he was sure when he checked in at the embarkation command that he'd be sent to the firing squad. So again, I guess he's okay with that now. Like he's just ready for it to be over.
Yeah, he was ready to face the consequences of his actions finally.
Yeah, but he was shocked that no one had even been looking for him and wondered if all of the craziness we just saw was some sort of bizarre dream. He shows him his hand, which is now completely healed, and he hears a horn sound. He asks Mario what the horns are about, and Mario says it's a lifeboat drill, to which Enrico says, "Lifeboat drill? Jolly!" and then laughs like a doofus, you know, like an Italian would say. "A lifeboat drill, mamma mia!"
I love his goofy laugh at that.
In narration, Mario says he lost sight of Enrico for the rest of the journey and admits that he didn't try too hard to find him, since he'd have to tell him the Major was killed after Enrico left him unarmed against an army of rebels, but we wouldn't want that on Enrico's conscience, now would we? It's like a weird bit of black comedy at the end. Like, oh, by the way, Major died too, but I'm not going to tell him.
Sorry. It's okay. I know you went through a whole thing with that girl, and it's all right.
Yeah, it's been rough for everybody. He goes on to say they all thought the killing time, sort of, was over after Ethiopia, and that they were all planning to turn their swords in for tractors and get back to a normal life. But then their fascist dictator decided to become best buds with some guy named Adolf, and they started a fun little skirmish for world domination, but that's a story for another time. The end. Happy ending.
What a happy ending. Yeah, I don't know what we're supposed to be left with there. I feel like it's just that is what happened was the Italians just kind of fucked off and left and never faced any consequences for the atrocities they committed nonstop the whole time they were in Ethiopia, among other places. And all of like every country did that where they just like, oh, well, we claim this country. Holland, we're taking this one. Italy, we're taking this one.
Belgium,
Belgium, we're taking this
Congo.
one. Yeah, so it's like
carve it up.
Carve
still
it all
doing
up
it.
for
It's still
ourselves.
happening today, sort of.
Yep, exactly.
It's becoming into the forefront of the news again. Like China is making moves to secure places in Africa for resources, and Russia is as well. And
yeah, I mean that's where all of the resources of the world come from, Africa. And as Vince and I were discussing offline, like just imagine if they could have actually held on to those resources that belong to them, but were stolen by, colonizers and all these terrible people who did all these terrible things and just
not
acted like they were entitled to it. Oh, sorry.
What?
You guys.
Sorry.
Colonizers.
Hey, man.
Where's my reparations?
I only colonized the Native Americans' land. I didn't have anything to do with the Africans.
Yeah, that was England. Oh, wait.
Yeah.